Forget it, I'll marry him. When I said these words, my heart suddenly felt at ease. It was no big deal, and it could even be considered my good fortune, couldn't it? I am the third daughter of the Ningwa mansion in the capital. Since childhood, I have studied music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Thanks to my family's good standing, I even earned the reputation of being a talented lady of the capital. Being the youngest daughter, I received extra affection from my elders. I thought my life would continue like this, but unexpectedly, everything changed just 2 months before my 15th birthday and coming-of-age ceremony. I actually wasn't a blood descendant of the Ningwa mansion, but a peasant girl secretly swapped in due to a concubine's jealousy back then. Never mind how shocked my parents were, I couldn't accept it myself. How could it be? How could I possibly be a peasant girl? Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins, but upon careful thought, it actually made some sense. After all, I had never looked much like my parents since childhood, though no one had ever suspected it was because of bloodline. My parents immediately sent people to search for their biological daughter and explained the stakes to me in detail. Essentially, they would do everything to find that child. And they also hoped I would step down from my position as the third young lady. What could I say? Naturally, I nodded. Aru, mother knows you've been wronged. It's my fault. How could I feel wronged? Everything I've enjoyed these past 15 years was never truly mine to begin with. If I weren't the young lady of the estate, who knows what my life would be like now? Ru Hua, who has always served me, once told me that she was sold because her family had too many children and couldn't afford to raise them all. Thinking about it this way, I've been very fortunate. As long as I behave well, at least with the bond we've built over the years, I'll live comfortably for the rest of my life. So, I don't feel wronged. But after returning to my room, I still buried myself under the quilt and cried secretly. Why did such a thing have to happen to me? The thought that soon, the rightful third miss would rightfully possess everything I have now made me miserable. Such a wonderful mother, such a wonderful father, and my brothers, sisters, grandmother, none of them will be mine anymore. But then again, they never really were mine to begin with. I couldn't sleep well the entire night. I was afraid that the girl would resent me. Although this matter had nothing to do with me, I was indeed the beneficiary. How could I not feel guilty? The days passed slowly. Trying to find a girl whose name I didn't know was difficult, no different from searching for a needle in a haystack. But even so, no one in the family gave up. The courtyard had been chosen early on, in the best location with beautiful scenery. Before it was built, Mother said it was reserved for me, since my 2 older cousins were already married, and I was the only unmarried girl left in the family. But now, that's no longer the case. Mother said she knew it was unfair to me. But whenever she thought of her daughter who was lost out there, she couldn't help but want to give her the best. I understand, Mother. Aru, you are also my daughter, Mother said. I believed her words. After all, the bond we've shared over the years was never false. Even after the truth of my origins was revealed, the family, aside from putting effort into finding her, treated me just as before. It's just that I couldn't compare to her anymore. After all, everything I had in these 15 years, she had none of it. Actually, I hope we can find her soon, so everyone will feel better. It must have been a blessing from heaven. As news came right at the beginning of the new year, she's likely been found. In Zuzhu, the family was excited all night. And at the crack of dawn the next day, third brother from uncle's family and my own brother went to pick her up. Mother wanted to go along, but her health hasn't been great since giving birth. So we managed to persuade her to stay. After the 2 brothers left, Mother started counting the days. Aunt, worried she might end up disappointed, took her to decorate the courtyard, the one meant for her biological daughter. I often go over there, and sometimes they ask for my opinion. In their eyes, we are all girls of similar age, and we probably like the same things. However, I also think about my biological parents whom I've never met, wondering how they are doing now. The only information I had before was that the girl was alone, with no other relatives. Does that mean they didn't want her? Or could it be another possibility that they died in some disaster or tragedy? I don't wish for either. The former, I'm afraid that if Mother and the others find out, they might look down on me. Since I carry the blood of that couple, the latter would be cruel to me as well. That would mean I am truly alone in this vast world. with no one who shares my blood. 2 months later, my brothers returned, weary from their journey. They had sent word earlier saying the girl was indeed real, as she looked so much like mother. After meeting her, I realized just how similar they were, the same almond-shaped eyes, the same little dimples. If she weren't a bit thinner and darker, she would have looked even more like mother. As soon as we met, mother pulled her into a tight embrace, as if afraid she might disappear, crying quietly. Even father's eyes reddened. Auntie said, "It's good to have you back." Only I stood alone like an outsider. No, I was always an outsider. Mother held her hand and introduced her to everyone one by one. When it came to me, there was a brief pause, a little awkward, but the girl reacted quickly and called me sister. "Good girl," mother said. "She really is as perceptive as mother." That's good. I should be happy. But somehow, I just didn't feel right inside. At lunchtime, the whole family fussed over her with warm concern. And I felt a bit envious, struggling to hold back my tears. I had mentally prepared for so long I shouldn't be like this. After lunch, I took her around the courtyard. Mother pointed things out to her one by one, explaining how the courtyard was the result of everyone's hard work. But one sentence from her made me break down completely. She said, "I never imagined I could live in such a beautiful courtyard. It's like a fairyland." It wasn't just me, everyone present must have felt a lump in their throat. She should have enjoyed all this from the moment she was born. No matter how beautiful the courtyard is, she shouldn't have to marvel at it like this. It should have been hers by right. I thought I would have trouble adjusting to her return, but now it seems it's not so bad. It's just that I'm no longer the only one in the family. She has a very good temperament, gentle and serene, and is eager to learn. Originally, my father wanted to hire a tutor for her, but she refused, saying she could seek guidance from me. She seems to treat me very well, so well that it puzzles me a little. Sometimes when others overlook me, she deliberately brings me up. I've thought about it. If our roles were reversed, I would probably feel resentment. After all, these years have been too hard. How could that be? Although our parents weren't wealthy, they gave me the best they had. Sister. We share the same parents. They gave us everything they could. She said this to me. It wasn't until over half a month later, one night, that we truly had a heart-to-heart talk. By then, we had already grown quite close. Perhaps it was the right atmosphere, but she took the initiative to tell me about her childhood. It was the first time I had ever pictured my biological parents in my mind, and I believe they must have been very, very good people. She said she was supposed to have a younger brother. But unfortunately, her mother's health was poor, and the child was lost. After that, all the family's burdens fell on her father's shoulders. She said that in the countryside, having only one daughter was considered shameful, but her parents treated her exceptionally well. Her father even taught her to read and write in his spare time. Sadly, she thought there would be plenty of time to learn slowly, never expecting that a sudden separation by life and death would come in the blink of an eye. She said if it weren't for the flood in Zuzhu and the ensuing epidemic, she could have brought her parents to meet me. The flood in Zuzhu happened 6 years ago, and at the time, I followed the trend and donated 100 taels of silver. Disasters felt so distant to me back then. My only impression was the long string of numbers my father and uncle mentioned. Little did I know that I was actually one of the victims. It's a pity I couldn't do much to help. If I could turn back time, I would donate more money and urge my father to go to Zuzhu and bring their family here. Then, I would have had parents too. Mother said that in a few days, Muhi would be recorded in the family register, and once she learned the proper etiquette, she would be taken out for social engagements. As for me, I would be considered an adopted daughter of the Zhao family. Aru, don't worry, in your father's and my heart, you will always be our daughter. I know, mother, I should be content. Being an adopted daughter is actually not so bad. It's better than being an orphan. Besides, the things I've learned over the years will always be mine. However, none of us had expected that something would still go wrong. The emperor issued an edict decreeing a marriage, specifically naming a daughter of the Zhao family to wed Prince Li. Prince Li, the emperor's fifth son, was naturally of noble status, but he was known to be cursed in marriage. His two previous consorts, one died suddenly before the wedding, and the other passed away on the very night of their marriage. Moreover, he had been sent to the borderlands in his teens, where he achieved numerous military feats but also shed much blood, earning a reputation fearsome enough to make children stop crying. Such a person is hardly a suitable match. The emperor chose the Zhao family's daughter because originally, I was the only unmarried girl in the Ningguo mansion. But that is no longer the case. Now, I am merely an imposter. But even so, it remains a difficult problem. After all, in the eyes of outsiders, the person the emperor selected is me. Mu He has only just returned, and the news hasn't spread, so naturally, no one else knows. If we reveal it now, it would seem as if we deliberately devised this plan. For a moment, everyone was at a loss about what to do. For this marriage, it would either be me or Mu He. So, when Mu He and I went to pay our respects, we overheard our parents' discussion before even entering. In a way, I was actually happy. The Prince of Li was not a suitable match, and the reason my parents were arguing was out of concern for both Mu He and me, not just to push me forward. That, to me, was enough. So, I pulled Mu He inside and told my parents, I'll marry him. Everyone was stunned. Father was the first to react, saying to me, Eru, what are you talking about? Eru, mother can't bear to part with you. That's not a. Mother's voice trailed off. Sister. Mu He still didn't understand the seriousness of the marriage, looking confused and innocent. After all, the person His Majesty intended when he issued the decree should have been his daughter. I have enjoyed 16 years of wealth and happiness in Mu He's place, and now this marriage is my way of repaying her with a peaceful life for the rest of her days. After all, it can be considered that I am marrying above my station. Even my 2 older cousins were unable to marry into the royal family, so for a commoner like me to marry into royalty now is like reaching the heavens in a single step. No matter how reluctant my parents may be, someone had to step forward. The wedding date is quite rushed. Ever since I said I would marry, the family's attention seems to have shifted back to me. Mother has been busy preparing my dowry every day. I've seen the dowry list, it's several pages long. More than what my cousins had when they married. Leave it for he, I said, glancing at Mu He beside me. Hers isn't urgent yet. Your father and I want to keep her at home for a few more years. Mother patted my hand and said, but, I hesitated. She's the same age as me, won't she be too old if you keep her for a few more years? Mother could tell what I was thinking and said, she's not like you, we just want her to marry into an ordinary family, with the support of her household, and live happily. Mu He also nodded beside her. Yes, Mother says noble families have too many rules, and I'm not as clever as my sister. I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to learn them. Ru, if it weren't for the emperor's arranged marriage, your father and I would have also wished for you to live a safe and peaceful life. I felt my eyes grow a little moist. It turned out I had been overthinking things. Even with Mu He's return, Mother and Father still treated me very well. It's just a pity that life is so unpredictable. On the eve of the wedding, Mu He came to see me and spoke of this marriage, saying, Sister, actually, you never owed me anything. I met her gaze as she continued, it is I who owe you, sister. If Father hadn't protected me, he wouldn't have died. Sister, I owe you a life. With that, she threw herself into my arms. It's all right, I'm not just doing this for you, I'm doing this for myself too. The only thing I can rely on is the Ningguo mansion, so, I have to do something, to plan for my own future. Otherwise, why would they protect someone as unrelated as me? But I'm too narrow-minded, nothing like their kindness. When my brother carried me to the bridal sedan, he told me, if I ever feel wronged, I can always come back. Hearing that, I felt like crying again. This is the place I've lived for 16 years. No matter what happens in the future, at least at this moment, in their hearts, I am still a part of this family. Worship heaven and earth, then enter the bridal chamber. I was nervous until Prince Li lifted the wedding veil. This prince, rumored to be a wife killer, looked quite handsome, not some 3-headed, 6-armed monster, at least he's human. After a night of spring passion, I felt a bit unwell the next day when we went to the palace to express gratitude. The emperor merely said a few customary auspicious words, and then we went to pay respects to the empress, who did the same. We were supposed to pay respects to Prince Li's birth mother as well, but she had passed away from illness many years ago, so we returned. He has also given me the authority of the housekeeper. And it seems everything is going well. It's not exactly a den of dragons and tigers. After all, on the day of the bridal return visit, I had thought I would have to go back alone, but unexpectedly, he didn't go to the military camp that day. Instead, he accompanied me home and stayed for a short while, giving me plenty of face. In private, Mother told me that father plans to adopt Mujer as his foster daughter. I was startled and asked if Mujer agreed. Mother nodded and said to me, "Since you've married the Prince of Li, how could our Zhao family have an extra daughter?" Mother, I wanted to say that I never expected things to turn out this way in the beginning. I know, you also want what's best for Ahi, Aru. You are the daughter I have carefully raised, and I know you well. However, I must say, this news still made me happy for a long time. At the very least, I am still a daughter of the Zhao family in the family tree. Yet, I also feel sorry for my biological parents. A daughter like me probably doesn't deserve to be their child. The days after marriage were plain and uneventful. King Li had no interest in women. He spent his days either in the study or at the military camp, which suited me just fine, as we only shared a bed a few days each month. Although he appears cold and aloof, he doesn't seem to have any of the perverse hobbies rumored about him. Thinking about it this way, those previous incidents were probably just accidents. Perhaps I snatched a good marriage away from Muhi. I became pregnant about half a year after the wedding. When King Li found out, he showed no expression on his face but sent word to my parents. The next day, my mother came with Mujer, just ran into King Li, and after he left, Muhi suddenly asked me if life is hard these days. How could that be? But, she frowned, but the prince seems very difficult to get along with. She is not the easiest to get along with, but it's manageable since we don't spend much time together. Mother gave me a lot of advice on taking care of myself during pregnancy and even gave me several food recipes. Back when I was pregnant with your brother, I couldn't keep anything down, and it was these recipes that helped me get through it. I took a general look, and most of the dishes are quite sour and spicy, not like what is commonly eaten in the capital. When I was 6 months pregnant, I went back to the Ningguo mansion. My mother told me that Muher's marriage had been arranged. It was with one of my father's students, who had just passed the imperial examination. With a little maneuvering, he could secure a minor official post in the capital. Father's student, presumably of good character, but his official rank is probably only 7th or 8th grade, which is rather low. Mother seemed to sense what I was thinking. Aru, that student's family is simple. Ar isn't as clever as you. She can't handle a large family. Although the student came from a wealthy family, his fate was rather unfortunate. He lost his mother in his childhood and his father a few years ago. It was due to the period of mourning that he remained unmarried to this day. After all, it was common for men to marry at 17 or 18, but his age does match quite well with Muher's. My daughter just feels that his status is a bit too low, as long as he is a good person. And Ar herself likes him. With the family's protection, she won't suffer any disadvantage. Truly well-matched and deeply compatible couples are few and far between. To outsiders, the Prince of Li and I may seem well-matched in status, but we are far from being deeply compatible. Muher and that student might be deeply compatible, but even as an adopted daughter, she is still a young lady of the Ningguo mansion. How could a minor official of low rank ever hope to be worthy of her? Has Ar's dowry been prepared yet? A woman's dowry is something that is gradually prepared from a young age. When I got married back then, I married a prince, so naturally, more was added to it than usual. Now, for Muher, I suppose many things haven't been prepared in time. After all, a dowry isn't just about money. Some valuable items require luck to come across the finest ones, and ordinary families wouldn't even consider them worthy. It's been arranged. I've discussed it with your father. Her dowry doesn't need to be as lavish as yours. After all, the person she's marrying isn't of the same standing as you were, so some things don't need to be the absolute best. Instead, we'll add more money and shops. It's better to have wealth in hand. Money is never a mistake. But back in my day, my dowry also included several chests of books. They looked plain and unremarkable, but in reality, they were rare ancient texts. Priceless and impossible to find on the market. When marrying into a powerful and noble family, what truly matters is the depth and substance of the dowry. I'll add to Ar's dowry when the time comes. Very well, I gave birth to the child when I was 9 months pregnant, a little girl. To me, whether the child was a boy or a girl didn't matter. She was the only person in this world connected to me by blood. It felt wonderful. I was no longer alone. My personal maid, Bilian, told me that the prince only glanced at the child before leaving. She said uneasily, "Miss, Do you think the prince might not like the little princess? No, he wouldn't. Besides, the child is already born, it's not like he can just throw it away if he doesn't like it. Since I became pregnant, he only gave me a few words of advice, like eat well and drink well. I've thought about it, and maybe it's because we haven't been together long enough. But I really can't tell what gender he was hoping for in this child. However, everyone else hoped the child would be a boy. It wasn't about favoring sons over daughters, it's just that in the royal family, boys are generally regarded as more esteemed than girls. On the third day after the child's birth, Prince Li came to tell me that he had chosen a name for her, a single character. Yao. The name was certainly a good one. But what shocked me was how early it was given. Once a child has a name, they can be recorded in the imperial genealogy. It's common practice to wait until a child is older before naming them, as infants are often difficult to raise even in the royal family. From that day on, I called her Yao Yao, watching her change day by day, growing fair and plump, utterly adorable. Since having Yao Yao, life has felt more comfortable. But when Yao Yao was 6 months old, Bilian cautiously asked me if I had noticed that the prince didn't seem to like Yao Yao. I thought about it and realized it really did seem that way. He had never held Yao Yao, never played with her, and because I had been recovering my health recently, he hadn't been coming over much either. Could it be that he doesn't like children? But that didn't seem right either. Yaoyoro's food and clothing were all of the finest quality, and many of these things were even taken from his private treasury on his orders. After thinking it over and still not understanding, I just let it go. After all, Yao Yao is his only child now. Even if he doesn't like her, what can he do? It's not like he likes any children outside the family either. It's probably just his nature, why force it? When Yao Yao was 8 months old, Muhe got married, and I added quite a few gifts. That day when I returned home, everyone in the family was smiling, genuinely happy for Muhe. When I got married, although everyone was smiling too, they weren't this happy. Instead, they were worried. The wedding was lively and bustling. Although not as grand as mine had been, it was still extremely thoughtful. Mother said that Muhe's wedding dress was embroidered by her own hands. No wonder it looked so beautiful. I hope her future days will be just as prosperous and vibrant. That's probably the expectation everyone in the family has for her. After a busy day, I was quite tired when I got back. I had just closed my eyes for a moment when I heard Bailian urgently calling me, as if something major had happened. When I went out, I saw it was Yao Yao. Somehow, it just so happened that while Yao Yao was playing, the prince unexpectedly came by. Yao Yao doesn't see him often, so she's bold and curious. She crawled over unsteadily, grabbed the hem of the prince's robe, and stood up. She's just learned to stand recently and isn't steady on her feet. Bailian said the prince ordered someone to take Yao Yao away, but she wouldn't listen, and the wet nurses and maids didn't dare approach. For a moment, they were at a standstill. Yao Yao even freed one hand and reached up, wanting the prince to hold her, perhaps seeing me come out. I even felt as if the prince breathed a sigh of relief and signaled with his eyes for me to take the child away. When I went to pick up Yao Yao, she still wouldn't let go. I don't know who she takes after, Your Highness. Please bear with it and hold her for a moment, I said. After a long while, I finally heard the prince murmur softly, how would I know how to hold a child? I dismissed all the attendants to spare him from losing face, then instructed him on how to hold her. Unexpectedly, though his movements were subtle, he looked utterly stiff. Yao Yao seemed to find it amusing and started wriggling again. I noticed the prince's face had turned pale, as if he were frightened. A sudden thought crossed my mind. Perhaps it wasn't that he disliked Yao Yao, but that he simply didn't dare to touch her. I could only patiently teach her. After all, 8-month-old Yao Yao was much better than when she was a newborn. Newborns are so soft and fragile. I didn't even dare to touch her. When Yao Yao got tired from playing and was carried away, the prince finally stated the purpose of his visit today. Since it's now the clear and crisp autumn season, he plans to take us on a trip to the estate. It sounds fun. But I can't help feeling it's because of Yao Yao. Otherwise, why didn't we go last year? Even if I wasn't in good health then, what about the year before? To put it bluntly, I'm just not worthy. The estate was indeed quite interesting, with many small animals raised there. Yao Yao had never seen them before and insisted on having someone take her to see them every day. Her favorite is still the little white rabbit, but I don't dare let her play with it. Forget about cleanliness, children don't know how to handle things gently, and what's more, Yaro Yaro has such delicate skin. What if the rabbit bites her when it gets upset? What's even more rare is that the prince has also come along and seems to have some free time now. At least I get to see him every day. He's also becoming more familiar with holding Yaro Yaro. It must be their natural father-daughter bond. Yaro Yaro really likes him. But who would have thought that in just half a month? News broke that the emperor had deposed the crown prince and placed Prince Ping under house arrest. The crown prince was the emperor's eldest legitimate son, raised since childhood to be the heir. Prince Ping, the emperor's second son, was known for his literary talents and had the best reputation among scholars. To suddenly punish both of them so severely was clearly no small matter. Upon receiving the message, the prince returned immediately, only telling us to stay put at the estate. Yaro Yaro remains cheerful every day, but I'm constantly on edge. After all, when I think about it carefully, though it was sudden, I can't help but feel it has something to do with the prince. Fortunately, within a few days, the prince brought us back. I heard a few families were imprisoned, but things have since calmed down. I've always been short-sighted, only concerned with my own little world, so as long as the Ningwa mansion and our household remain unaffected, I couldn't care less about others. Yaro Yaro can now walk more steadily and can even say 2 or 3 words at a time. Mother told me to prepare to have another child, preferably a boy, but having a child isn't something I can decide on my own. Fortunately, it seems the prince is quite fond of Yaro Yaro. However, I didn't expect that this year's selection of court ladies would bring 2 new women into the mansion. Both of these women come from official families, though their ranks are not high. And they are not from the capital. Perhaps that's why they entered the mansion as concubines. Their character will only be revealed over time, but their looks are quite pleasing, not stunning beauties, but each has her own charm. I didn't treat them harshly in terms of accommodation and had them arranged to live together. I suppose, being from the same selection, they should be able to get along. I informed the prince about the matter, and as usual, he simply said he understood. Who would have thought that for a full half-month, he hadn't visited either of them? I thought it wasn't right, so on the 15th night when the prince came over, I mentioned it again. He glanced at me, seemingly thinking I was meddling in his affairs. I don't know if my words struck a chord with him. But on the 16th night, I heard from the servants that the prince had gone over. Lian was puzzled, not understanding why I had pushed the prince away. Actually, what's there to be puzzled about? What man doesn't have concubines? Even though my father and mother had such a good relationship, he still had concubines otherwise. The mistake between Mu He and me wouldn't have happened. The prince and I aren't exactly a love match. Why would I expect exclusive favor? Besides, when he comes to me, it's only because I'm the principal wife. But I didn't expect that the prince only stayed for a moment, or rather, he left as soon as he entered. I sent someone to inquire and found out that the prince had gone to Lady Wu's quarters, but unfortunately, she had used incense, and the prince couldn't stand the smell, so he left. I was both amused and exasperated to learn this. I love the fragrance of fruits, so I rarely use incense in my room, preferring to place seasonal fruits instead. That's why I hadn't known about the prince's preference. Unexpectedly, Lady Wu had walked right into the line of fire. I had thought that even if he didn't like it, he would at least pay a visit to Lady Wang's place, but he didn't. The next time he came to my quarters, I mentioned it, and he said discontentedly, "I put you in charge of managing the household affairs, not to have you keep an eye on me all day." "All right then, as long as you're happy. I've done my duty, after all. Actually, it's just as well this way. No one will share the favor that Yaro Yaro and I receive. Mu He is pregnant. I went to visit her and saw her face full of smiles, so I suppose she must be living quite well. When she got married, she only brought along 2 maids and the Lu family nanny. It wasn't a large entourage, but it wasn't too small either. When she saw me, she even asked why Yaro Yaro hadn't come along. After chatting for a while, I realized that she is truly happy. This marriage was indeed a good choice. If only, well, what's the use of so many if onlys? Aren't I living quite well myself? Why should I envy others? After all, how can life ever be perfect? The capital may seem calm on the surface, but underneath, it's turbulent. Fortunately, as a woman confined to the inner chambers, I don't have to worry about any of it and can live in peace. But who would have thought that my mother would suddenly show up and say all sorts of things to me? leaving me utterly confused. It was only later that I found out the prince was going off to war, but since it was already decided, why didn't he tell me? Rue, you really don't know, Mother said in surprise. It seemed this matter was no longer a secret, and I was the only one kept in the dark. Probably the prince forgot. After Mother left, I called for the steward. Sure enough, the steward knew as well. When the prince returned in the evening, I asked him about it. He said, "What could you do even if you knew?" His words instantly silenced what I was about to say, and I couldn't be bothered with him. Still, I ended up giving a few instructions when the servants were packing things up. After all, I really had no experience in such matters. Over these years of marriage, life has been so peaceful that I almost forgot this man rose to his position through military achievements. The day before he set off for battle, he was still playing with Yao Yao. I handed him the protective talisman I had sought for him, but he didn't even glance at it and said, rather than believing in such things, the princess consort would do better to focus on something useful. Truth be told, it wasn't my idea to seek this talisman, it was my mother and Muher who dragged me along. They both believed that going to war was extremely dangerous, so much so that Muher, despite her pregnancy, still went through the trouble. While it is indeed dangerous, it's not to such an extent. They were probably worried that if the prince encountered misfortune on this campaign, Yao Yao and I, as a widow and orphan, would have a hard time. But what hardship is there really? Yao Yao is still young, and time can heal all wounds. As for me, the prince and I are merely living together for convenience. Not long after the prince left, I discovered I was pregnant, which could be considered a good thing. Yao Yao, without being taught, started calling my belly little brother. After asking a few questions, I learned it was her nanny who had taught her. I thought to myself, how could a child as young as Yao Yao know the difference between a brother and a sister? Muher gave birth to a baby boy. I brought Yao Yao along to visit. And throughout the entire time, she hardly smiled. Her chubby little face looked quite serious. I thought it was because it was her first time seeing such a small baby, but I didn't expect that after we returned, she started calling the baby in my belly little sister. I asked why, and she hesitated, saying, "Little brother, ugly. Little brother will be good looking when he grows up." "No, little brother, ugly." Yao Yao said it with conviction. I teased her. "Then how do you know the little sister isn't ugly?" Yao Yao, beautiful, little sister, beautiful. After 3 months of pregnancy, when the fetus was stable, I sent a letter to the prince. I didn't know if he would receive it, how long it would take to arrive, or whether he would reply. When I received the reply 2 months later, it was still his usual style, just a brief acknowledgement, telling me to take good care of the pregnancy. In contrast, he wrote much more about Yao Yao. A full page of the letter was mostly about her, and at the end, he mentioned Lady Wu and Lady Wang, instructing them to go to the temple to pray for blessings. Although I didn't know what he was thinking, for me, it was indeed a good solution. Now that I was carrying a child, I sometimes couldn't pay attention to everything. Those 2 women seemed quiet, but who knew if they might stir up trouble? Sending them away was a pretty good idea. After all, it wasn't my idea. Could we possibly ignore the prince's words? The next day, I had them taken away. Naturally, they were unwilling, but what else could they do? Along with them went a few stern matrons I had carefully selected, women of few words but firm actions. As everyone had hoped, the child was a boy, and I breathed a sigh of relief. To put it elegantly, we had finally achieved the character, good, composed of the characters for girl and boy, but more practically speaking, a family like ours needed a son. Preparing for the worst, if the prince does not return, with this child, I and Yao Yao, with her younger brother, will have a much better life in the future. This child will be our support many years from now. Though it may sound too utilitarian, it is the truth. I heard that Yao Yao took one look and then refused to look at the child again, constantly complaining that he was ugly. Well, the little girl, now almost 3 years old, does have her own sense of aesthetics. Fortunately, after raising him for some time, Yao Yao finally thought the child was good looking. Even though the baby was too small and slept all day long, Yao Yao still liked to keep watch over him. Little brother is pretty. At the full moon celebration, we received a letter from the prince, who gave the child a name, Ju. I originally wanted to call him Aju, but Yao Yao always called him Cho Cho, ugly, and I ended up being influenced by her. The prince is finally coming back. It's been 3 years since he left. Yaro Yaro has grown up, and Cho Cho has learned to talk. Time flies, and I've grown accustomed to this life. On the day the army entered the city, I took the 2 children to watch. Yaro Yaro pointed at the prince and asked, "Is that father?" Seeing me nod, Yaroro's eyes practically sparkled. Father is so handsome. Indeed, the prince wasn't unattractive. How could anyone in the royal family be ugly? It's just that he had too much blood on his hands. Carrying an aura of killing. Fortunately, his reputation had improved somewhat by then. The old rumors about him being a wife killer were no longer mentioned. After watching, Yao Yao urged me to go back. She wanted to see her father. When the prince left, Yao Yao was too young to remember much. But as she grew older, she remained deeply curious about him. They say that a short absence makes the heart grow fonder, but that wasn't the case for me and the prince, at the very least. The first person he saw was Yao Yao, and just like before, he scooped her up in his arms. The second one he glanced at was Cho Cho, who had never seen him before and wasn't very brave. When it came to me, it was just a few polite words. His return seemed to make no difference to me, as if he had never left. There aren't many married couples who live like us, are there? I just thought that since he was back, the Wu and Wang families who had gone to pray could be brought back. I found a moment to mention it to him, but he looked completely blank, seemingly having forgotten all about it. Do as you please. Once again, he left the decision to me. In a way, it was just as well this way. It avoided conflict between the wife and concubines, not just in the royal family, but even in noble households. The affairs of the inner court are often a tangled mess. Most principal wives only care about holding power and ensuring their legitimate sons succeed. The rest is left to chance. Coming to me, things actually became simpler. This man seemed to have no regard for women at all. If I weren't his lawfully wedded wife, if it weren't for the sake of heirs, he probably wouldn't even bother to look at me. This kind of life is peaceful for me. But it might not be the same for others. Like Muher, her husband truly lives up to being the man my father personally chose. Over the years, he's only gotten better, and their life together is sweet and harmonious. Sometimes when we chat, she talks about her husband, and her eyes unconsciously light up with a smile. If she had been the one to marry into the prince's mansion back then, she would have long grown tired of this dull life of mine, while I probably wouldn't be like her, with my heart and eyes completely filled with one person. Thankfully, now, we're both quite satisfied with our own lives. That was enough, thinking that Yaro Yaro is no longer a little child now. The things she should learn need to be gradually arranged. Knowledge and etiquette must be acquired through long-term exposure from a young age. They cannot be achieved overnight. Her nature has always been a bit wild, and since the prince returned, he indulges her even more. Sometimes I can't even find her. Whenever I ask, it's always because the prince took her out. It gives me a headache. I'm happy that their father-daughter relationship is good, but it might be a bit too good. Before long, everyone in the capital knew how much he doted on Yaro Yaro. Even Chocho, his son, couldn't compare to Yaro Yaro, though it might also be because Chocho is still too young. The prince doesn't like very young children. I suspect it's not that he dislikes them, but rather that he's afraid he might unintentionally hurt them. Just like when Yaro Yaro was little, he didn't even dare to touch her. So, in my daily life, I teach Chocho to learn from his sister and to cling to his father. After all, boys need to be trained and toughened up from a young age. It would be best if the prince could keep Yaro Yaro at home. A girl shouldn't be allowed to run wild like this all day. As it turned out, the prince didn't mind the trouble at all and carried both of them away, one in each arm. I had to find a time to discuss the children's education with the prince in detail, to which he simply said, "My daughter is naturally the best. Yaro Yaro is naturally good, but she still needs to learn the rules. Otherwise it will be even harder for her when she grows up. Then she doesn't have to learn. What will she do in the future if she doesn't learn? The world has always been harsh on women. Naturally, I want Yaro Yaro to live well, but we can't be with her forever. We must teach her how to adapt to the rules. Who dares to say my daughter is not good enough?" My headache grew worse. Not only did my head ache, but I also began to worry about whether Yaro Yaro would ever be able to marry with a father like this. It seems I must become a strict mother. Otherwise, this household will have no sense of order. Somehow, the prince has been spending less time at the military camp lately. The emperor is growing older, and his suspicions are deepening. The crown prince was deposed a few years ago, and last New Year's Eve, the emperor praised him lavishly, making it seem like things were improving. But before the first month was over, he issued an order to place him under house arrest. One can only say that royal affairs are too complicated. Father and son are not like father and son, and ruler and subject are not like ruler and subject. Fortunately, the prince has been away these past few years, which has allowed him to avoid much of it. Some of these matters I heard from my mother, and some were told to me by Mujer. The prince never speaks to me about such things. I had thought the household was relatively peaceful, but unexpectedly, trouble still arose. Lady Wu was secretly passing messages outside the estate. Although she couldn't access any important information, she was still a spy. By the time I found out, the prince had already sent someone to interrogate her. She remained stubborn and didn't say a word. I had thought that at this point, some form of punishment would follow, but the prince directly ordered her execution. Is this really appropriate? After all, she was someone bestowed by the emperor. Although her background wasn't particularly distinguished, she was still an official's daughter. What would people think if word got out that she was beaten to death? Woman's soft-heartedness, the prince said without even looking at me. Not only that, but he also ordered everyone in the mansion to witness the punishment. I couldn't bear it and returned to my room alone. According to Bai Lian, who came back from witnessing the punishment, the scene was truly gruesome. Lady Wang fainted on the spot. The mansion suppressed the news, and within a few days, it was simply announced to the outside that Lady Wu had passed away from illness. Even if the circumstances were unclear, her family wouldn't dare to come asking questions. Moreover, with a little thought, it was obvious that this was a sudden death. I suddenly remembered that before I married into this household, the prince took a second wife, and the bride died suddenly on the wedding night. What was the truth behind it? Could it have been the same as with Lady Wu, beaten to death in such a brutal manner? Not long after, Lady Wang requested to leave to pray for blessings. I had no intention of making things difficult for her. But this matter still needed to be reported to the prince. In the end, it got stuck with him, with 2 concubines in the mansion, one dead from illness, the other away praying. The princess is truly broad-minded, he said coldly. It seems it's no use. His attitude toward me has always been like this, and I don't feel upset. After all, not everyone is suited to be a husband. As long as he can be a good father, that's enough. At the very least, Yaro Yaro and Cho Cho can grow up like other children. Yaro Yaro is 7 years old. When she sits quietly without speaking or moving, she looks just like a pretty little girl. But once she starts moving, she's as wild as a rabbit. The prince has contributed quite a bit to Yaro Yaro growing up this way. The prince truly dotes on Yaro Yaro, at least. I've never seen anyone spoil a child like this. I was quite pampered myself when I was little, but my father never carried me on his shoulders or took me out to play all day long. But as children grow up, there are always things to worry about. For example, the emperor summoned Yaro Yaro to the palace, saying it was just for fun, but after she'd been gone for half a month, I started to feel uneasy, especially since the prince's mother passed away long ago, and we have no acquaintances in the palace. What if something happens? I was so anxious I was pacing around in circles, but the father and daughter pair were still out and about all day. Meanwhile, Cho Cho, though a few years younger than Yaro Yaro, was already being tutored by a teacher the prince hired as soon as she could hold a brush. Now, despite her young age, she may not be able to speak with eloquence, but she's still cleverer than other children her age. Perhaps seeing my anxiety, Yaro Yaro comforted me, saying, "Mother, don't worry. Father said that once I enter the palace, I can play however I want. After all, the emperor is my grandfather. No one would dare bully me, no." Hearing this only made me more worried. Compared to Yaro Yaro, Cho Cho was too well behaved, so much so that after Yaro Yaro entered the palace, the house felt much quieter. But the peace didn't last long. Soon, trouble stirred again outside. Prince Jing had fallen from power, and Prince Kang was said to have suffered significant losses. These two had been the top contenders for the throne in recent years, one known as the virtuous prince, and the other, though young, backed by a powerful maternal family. Actually, I once couldn't understand why one must fight for it. One general's success is built on the bones of thousands, let alone the imperial throne, but perhaps that's just how it is. Everyone is just one step away from that position. And no one is willing to give up. In ordinary families, the eldest legitimate son inherits most of the family property, but it's the imperial family that, despite being the most rule-bound place, is the most unruly. Once someone ascends to power, who cares how it was achieved? After all, no one is willing to submit to another. Although this disaster didn't directly affect our mansion, it did impact the Ningwa mansion. There are many noble families in the capital, and their marital connections are complex. When you carefully trace the relationships between two seemingly unrelated people, you'll find they are more or less connected. And that's exactly why the Ningwa mansion was implicated, to put it bluntly. It all depends on the emperor's mood. Clearly, the ambitions of his sons, each greater than the last, have displeased him. Uncle has indeed stepped down, and the title has been passed to the eldest cousin. As the new year turned, the emperor's health grew increasingly worse. At the beginning of the year, his favorite young prince in recent years also caught a cold and passed away. When the news came, Yaro even cried. Uncle 16 was so kind, he always took the blame for me. The 16th prince was the same age as Yaro. What a pity. Was it fate or human design? Who can really say? The matter won't be settled until the heir to the throne is decided. The prince currently has no official duties. Due to the emperor's poor health, he no longer takes Yaro out every day as he used to. Muher often comes to chat with me, and we get along well, as if we were a pair of close sisters. The emperor passed away, and the prince ascended the throne. It seems simple. But the previous night was chaotic. The usually well-behaved Prince of Yu raised an army in rebellion, but unfortunately, he was outmaneuvered and exposed by the emperor. In the end, both sides suffered losses. Before the emperor could deal with the instigator, Prince Yu, the prince took his own life right in front of the emperor. The emperor was so enraged that he couldn't catch his breath and passed away as well. As for the prince, it just so happened that he was at the scene and, coincidentally, held military power. Naturally, the throne couldn't fall to anyone else. All of this I learned from questioning the prince's attendants, who recounted it to me. It all felt like a dream, just picking up the pieces. The prince is now to be addressed as the emperor, according to custom. He rewarded his meritorious officials, and naturally, we all had our share. Without a doubt, I became the empress, Yaro became a princess, and as for Cho, he was directly named the crown prince. Others probably thought it was because he favored me, but in reality, he simply had no interest in women. I suspect he might not have any more children in the future. That Wang, who prayed for blessings, I originally thought of granting her the rank of a concubine, since she came from the household after all, but he was so stingy as to only give her the title of a noble lady. Calming down to think about it, I realize that perhaps I am the one who is best at picking up bargains. Who would have thought that the marriage no one wanted back then would truly turn out to be a match made in heaven? After the national mourning, the court officials petitioned for a selection of new consorts. The emperor didn't seem interested and rejected the proposals several times. I just took it as a bit of amusement after all. Given my current status, selfishly speaking, I don't wish for him to seek out more young, beautiful girls. It's not that I like him, but rather that I like my current position. As long as the harem remains dominated by me alone, it is most beneficial for me, my children, and even my family. Of course, on the surface, I am also a virtuous wife, so naturally I wouldn't say such things. On the contrary, I would even try to persuade him a couple of times anyway. He always treats my words as empty air, and I've grown used to it. However, I never expected those ministers to turn their spears toward me. I've been wronged. Fortunately, the emperor is on my side this time and thinks they're out of their minds. After all, in the emperor's view, his officials should be thinking about the state and its people at all times, working diligently for him, instead of obsessing over his harem day and night. I thought the matter had ended with the emperor's anger, but I never expected some people would truly stop at nothing to achieve their goals. What I never imagined was that this fire would actually burn me. This time, it wasn't the old accusation of jealousy anymore. Instead, they dug up the story of Muhi and me from many years ago. How the news reached me was through Muhi herself when she came to the palace. Since I became the empress, her visits had become less frequent. So I was quite happy to see her this time. During our conversation, I noticed she seemed hesitant several times, as if she wanted to say something but held back. I thought she might be facing some difficulty and couldn't speak freely with the palace maids around, so I dismissed them. Little did I expect she would tell me this. Don't you know, sister, the rumors outside have gotten completely out of hand these days. I truly had no idea. Lately, Yaro has been staying quietly with me, learning embroidery. It's rare for her to settle down like this, and I was happy to guide her. After Muher mentioned it, I realized Yaro probably already knew. She must have been worried about me, which is why she stayed with me so calmly these past few days and didn't let anyone tell me. In the end, it's my fault for not managing my household strictly, such a big matter, and no one dared to speak of it. Sister, what should we do? Could this be a crime of deceiving the emperor? Don't panic. What did father say? Father naturally insisted that you are the daughter of the Ningwa mansion, but Muher still seemed flustered. Mother's health has been poor because of this matter. Sister, I'm scared. After comforting Muher, I thought it over and decided it would be best to test the emperor's attitude. After all, as long as he doesn't suspect anything, we'll be fine. He spends almost all day in the Hall of Mental Cultivation, thinking I shouldn't go empty-handed. I had someone prepare some snacks. In the meantime, Yaro brought Cho over. Hearing that I was going to see the emperor, Yaro immediately panicked. Mother Empress, I tapped her forehead. Such a little person. Who told you to take matters into your own hands? They were just talking nonsense. I didn't want to worry you, Mother Empress. Then you should still tell me. How old are you after all? I am already a grown woman now. Although this was my first time taking the initiative to go to the Hall of Mental Cultivation, I still managed to see the emperor smoothly. Before I could even exchange pleasantries, he cut straight to the point. Get to the matter at hand. I could only ask about the widely discussed matter of the real and fake legitimate daughter, to which the emperor simply said, it's nothing but a bunch of petty people. Could the Ningwa mansion really fail to keep track of their own child, though absurd? It was indeed true. I nodded in agreement, but then he suddenly put down his brush, walked up to me, and said, Empress, tell me the truth, are you really the daughter of the Ningwa mansion? What does your majesty mean by this? The empress indeed does not resemble Lady Zhao II, but your parents' adopted daughter does bear some resemblance, he said. Your majesty must be joking. I tried to keep my tone steady. If I were truly my parents' daughter, would she have married so ordinarily? Her husband is now a fifth-rank official, but in the capital, that is hardly impressive, and he has no family background to rely on. This might also be the most compelling evidence in the eyes of outsiders. After all, who wouldn't want their daughter to marry well? I'm afraid my reputation back then wasn't even as good as Lu Jiyuan's. This, I actually couldn't refute, because it made too much sense. However, I couldn't nod in agreement. Doing so would be the crime of deceiving the emperor. Unexpectedly, he suddenly laughed. All right, Empress, you may return. I am aware of the matter now. It was never a big deal to begin with. What are you so afraid of? Somehow, his words suddenly made me feel much more at ease. Probably he treats me better than those nagging ministers who always look for trouble. After all, I've given him 2 children. He adores Yaro and Cho so much he wouldn't embarrass me too badly. In the end, he resolved the matter, as usual, in a simple and brutal way. Those who didn't cooperate were dismissed from their posts and had their homes confiscated. I wondered if it was a bit harsh, but then I thought, the emperor isn't one to be swayed by sentiment. He probably did it because those people had it coming anyway. Meanwhile, my mother, having recovered somewhat, came into the palace again just to talk to me about this. In the end, she just sighed and said, it's really the 2 of us who have let you and are down. Mother was talking about how father had confidently assured everyone in the court that I was indeed his daughter. Putting myself in Muher's shoes, if I were her, I might feel a bit uneasy hearing this. But I know Muher is not like me. She has always been kind-hearted, not as petty as I am. Mother has spoken with R, and after all, we have wronged her. Aru, even though you are doing well now, your father and I are still most worried about you. As for R, we can see her from time to time outside. It's just a matter of reputation. She will understand. Your daughter is doing well now, and His Majesty treats her well too. Ru, you've always had a mind of your own since you were little, which is a good thing. But this habit of only sharing good news and hiding the bad, who on earth did you take after? Perhaps intimidated by the emperor's methods, no one brought up the matter of my identity again. whether it was true or false. After all, dying over such a thing would hardly be honorable. After Yaro became a princess, she became even more unrestrained. The emperor dotes on her, so there's nothing I can do. She relies on her cleverness and doesn't study properly, always trying to cut corners when I scold her a little. You'd better watch out, or no one will want you, I teased her, but she wasn't shy at all. How could that be? I am Father Emperor's only daughter. Don't worry, Mother Empress, when the time comes, I'll be the one choosing them. She really is confident, but she's not wrong. The Emperor hasn't held any imperial selections these past few years. It seems he intends to carry on like this. Everyone has their own destiny. It was that way for me and Muhi, and it will be the same for the children. For me, such a life is quite good. At the very least, I've reached the pinnacle that most women in the world aspire to, without having to put in much effort. If I outlive the Emperor and become the Empress Dowager, it would be even more enviable. King Li's extra. My consort was personally chosen by me, but aside from my father, everyone else thought it was a whim of his own. My first encounter with Miss Zhao III was on the day I returned to the capital after my military campaign. Like the other young ladies, she was seated by the window of the Zhuangyuan Tower, looking down. To this day, I still remember that she was wearing a pale yellow dress, which made her already fair complexion appear even more delicate, with a tasseled hairpin adorning her temple. At that time, I didn't know which family's daughter she was, but I felt she was different, not in her attire or appearance, but in her eyes. Girls of 15 or 16 rarely possess such composure. Her eyes were calm and unruffled. The second time was when His Majesty summoned me to the palace and presented numerous portraits for me to choose a princess consort from. Her portrait was among them, and it was then that I learned she was the third daughter of the Ningguo mansion. Truth be told, I don't understand why one must marry and have children upon reaching a certain age. Can't I simply live my life alone? His Majesty said the mansion needs a mistress to manage affairs, but clearly, the steward could handle these matters just as well. Moreover, a princess consort is nothing but trouble. It's not as if I've never had a fiancé before. The first one was chosen by His Majesty, but before we could even meet, she fell ill and died. For that, I was inexplicably branded with the reputation of being a wife killer. The second fiancé was also selected by His Majesty, who claimed our birth charts were highly compatible. On our wedding night, I discovered this woman had ties to the crown prince. It's true that I don't care much for women, but I have no desire to wear a cuckold's horns. Since she married me yet remained entangled with another man, she deserved to die. As it turned out, not long after, not only did my reputation as a wife killer grow stronger, but I was also labeled as a jinx. When I lead troops into battle, how could I avoid killing? What's wrong with killing a few people? It was all to protect the country and defend our land. So, faced with a pile of portraits before me, I reluctantly chose Miss Zhao III, hoping she would be a sensible one. My father nodded in approval, saying something about the Ningguo mansion having an upright family tradition, making her a good choice. With the portraits laid out before him, which one could possibly be a wastrel? Fortunately, this time the grand wedding went off without a hitch. And the princess consort turned out to be a very proper person. I am quite satisfied as well. It seems that choosing a woman for oneself is indeed the way to go. After having the steward observe for a few days and finding no issues, I handed over the management of the household to her. The husband handles external affairs, the wife manages the home. As long as she behaves dutifully, I don't mind supporting a woman who doesn't contribute much. After all, I don't spend much time in the residence anyway. But not long after, the steward came to me, hesitating as he asked whether I might be incapable. Since I never visited the princess's chambers, is it wrong for me to want to sleep alone? Forget it, then I'll go on the 1st and 15th of the month. Fortunately, the princess is satisfied with this arrangement. I heard she often invites her mother and her adopted sister over. It doesn't matter, as long as it's not some strange man. She's pregnant. That's good. Lately, some things have made me realize that a man's career is more important, so I plan to climb higher. What if I succeed? The princess's belly is growing bigger day by day. I always worry that it might suddenly burst. I'm a little scared. Time flies, and she gave birth a daughter. I took a look. Though not particularly pretty, she is my own after all, and that's fine. She's just small and soft, as if she might break at the slightest touch. Forget it. I'd better keep my distance and wait until she grows up to play with her. I just gave the order that everything for the child must be of the best quality. After all, I have the money. Her name is something I thought about for a long time, and I finally settled on Yao. I think it's quite nice. My eldest and second brothers are probably truly foolish. They dug a pit and couldn't wait to jump right in. That day, I wanted to ask the princess consort to take Yao Yao to the estate for a while. Who would have thought that as soon as I entered, I'd run into Yao Yao crawling all over the floor. She's a bit bigger now, incredibly beautiful, and seems quite strong too, quick and sharp. She grabbed the hem of my robe and actually managed to wobble to her feet, impressive as it is. I still wanted the nanny to take her away. After all, a child this young doesn't look sturdy. What if she falls? However, she didn't see it that way and wouldn't let the nanny come over. It was truly terrifying. I didn't dare move. It wasn't until the princess came out, dismissed the servants, and showed me how to hold the child. A bit embarrassing, but Yao Yao was fragrant and soft, and it felt nice to hold her. From that day on, I became a bit more familiar with Yao Yao, and she seemed to like me a lot. The last person who liked me this much was my mother. I miss her a bit. The selection sent over 2 court ladies. I don't know if the princess has something wrong with her mind, but she keeps urging me day and night to go see them. What's so interesting about women? They all have 1 nose and 2 eyes. Not interested. She kept urging for half a month and still wouldn't give up. Fine, I'll give her some face. But who knows what kind of incense they use in their rooms? It smells awful. Not long after, there was movement at the border. I've had enough of this oppressive atmosphere in the capital anyway. Time to get away for some peace and quiet. And maybe drag a few brothers down with me. As for why I forgot to tell the princess, it's simply because it slipped my mind. What could she possibly do about such matters? Somehow she found out anyway, not only packing a bunch of things but also giving me a protective charm. This thing is useless. I'd rather have a few more bottles of medicine. But fine, to avoid her crying and making it seem like I won't return, I'll reluctantly accept it. Not long after, she wrote saying she's pregnant. I suppose it's good news. I hope it's a son, so if anyone bullies Yao Yao in the future, he can fight back for her. As for the concubines, send them away to pray for blessings, so they don't secretly do anything they shouldn't. The princess is pregnant and inevitably not in the best spirits, so don't neglect Yao Yao. In the blink of a few years, by the time I return, the children will have grown up. Although Yao Yao is older now, she's still lively and not shy around strangers. As for Cho Cho, hiding behind the princess, well, I won't hold it against the child. Girls should be happy and carefree. What's the point of learning needlework and feminine virtues? How old is Yao Yao anyway? With me around, could she possibly end up unmarried? The princess worries too much, even if she doesn't want to marry in the future. I'll support her for life. Who would dare say a word? As for Cho Cho, he needs more training. I don't expect him to excel in both literary and martial arts, but he should at least have some exposure to both. So, under the pretense of educating the children, I comfortably settled into the role of a leisurely prince. My father is getting old and fears others coveting the dragon throne beneath him. I'd rather keep a low profile, making subtle moves in secret on the surface. I must remain the most pure and detached one. Yet, someone is again leaking information outside the mansion. Women truly are no good except for Yao Yao and the Empress Dowager. The princess consort might barely count as decent. My father's mind is growing increasingly unclear. Even though I've acted so indifferent and noble-minded, he still insists on summoning Yao Yao into the palace. It seems it's time for a change of power, a swift and decisive strike before his death. He'll witness a drama of father and son turning against each other. I have finally ascended the throne. From now on, I shall refer to myself as we. Being an emperor is comfortable, but it's surprising that some still dare to tell me what to do, without even considering if they're worthy. I can't be bothered to deal with them, so I just find fault with the Empress. They even fantastically fabricated the story of the real and fake young lady of the Ningguo mansion. Seems like they all have the potential to write storybooks. To spare the Empress from getting upset after finding out, I sent Yao Yao to keep her company. After all, Yao Yao is a bit older now, and it wouldn't hurt for her to learn some rules. I can't bear to discipline her myself, so I'll let the Empress play the bad guy. I just don't know how the Empress found out. And she even came specifically to ask me about it. I originally intended to brush it off with a few words, but judging by her expression, it seems the matter might actually be true. After many years of marriage, though we haven't spent much time together, I can still tell truth from lies. I was about to say that the Ningwa mansion had some nerve, but seeing her fearful look, the words stuck in my throat, and I couldn't say anything. I just told her to go back and not pay attention to the rumors. After all, she is the wife I personally chose, the mother of my children, and over the years, she has fulfilled what I consider to be the duties of a wife. That is enough. If I were to dig deeper, what would happen to Yaro Yaro and Cho Cho? Those meddling ministers would surely urge me to marry another woman, which would be even more troublesome. Fortunately, the people of Ningwa Manor aren't foolish either. They firmly insisted that those rumors were nonsense. The officials I need in my court are those who are hardworking and capable, not those who stir up trouble with their endless chatter. If they don't obey, I'll just replace them. Do I really lack people? Ever since I halted the imperial consort selection, the women from the minor selections have started causing trouble. In the time it takes me to take a stroll, I run into 3 or 5 trying to stage accidents, some singing, some dancing, and the most outrageous ones even dare to throw themselves into my arms, as if they have the courage of a bear or leopard. In just a few days, I couldn't bear it any longer and had to order the Empress to keep a tighter rein. When I was young, which of my father's consorts didn't go to great lengths to win favor? But the Empress, she's remarkably generous. However, her ability to handle affairs is indeed commendable. After she severely punished a group of palace maids, I no longer encountered such advances on my way. It was worth it for me to dismiss several ministers for her sake, just to stop the rumors about her background and spare her from constant anxiety. Side story, Muhi. For as long as I can remember, I have been the apple of my parents' eyes. My father was the only scholar in the village who taught the local children to earn tuition fees, so our family was fairly well off. Mother always dressed me up beautifully, buying me pretty hair ribbons every time we went to town. When father had time, he would teach me to read, but back then, I was mischievous and only wanted to go out to play, always distracted and getting scolded by father. A couple of years later, whenever I went out, I would overhear gossiping women whispering about our family behind our backs. They would say things like my mother was useless because she couldn't bear a son. But my father and mother were perfectly happy together, and whether or not they had a son didn't really matter. I knew what they were really after. They wanted my father to take a concubine. When I was 6, mother became pregnant again, and father was overjoyed. I secretly wished for a little brother, so that no one would gossip anymore. But I never expected that the younger brother in my mother's womb didn't even get the chance to open his eyes and see us before he was gone, and because of this, my mother was left with lingering health issues. The doctor said that the baby wasn't saved because my mother's health was poor and she was burdened with excessive worry. Excessive worry. The first thing that came to my mind was those gossipy women. I had heard them so many times, and my mother must have heard even more. It must have been their fault. My mother's poor health required her to take a lot of medicine, and medicine costs money. During that time, our family struggled greatly. It wasn't just about the money, more importantly, it was about my mother's health. In my father's eyes, money could be earned slowly, but my mother had to get better quickly. However, many things don't go as one wishes. When I was 8 years old, my mother finally passed away. I held on to her hand, refusing to let go. But my father firmly carried me away. That was the first time I learned what it meant to be separated by life and death, and I never wanted to experience it again. At the age of 9, heavy rain poured for months, causing the dam to burst and flood the area. Although the flood didn't reach our village, we couldn't escape the epidemic that followed. To survive, my father took what little belongings we had and my mother's memorial tablet, leading me away from the place we had always called home. But this was not the end. The pandemic was truly terrifying. It claimed many lives, and my father also left me. I no longer have a home. As a young girl, I had a very hard time. But fortunately, the court allocated funds, and there were donations from various places, so I didn't starve to death. As I grew up, I began to think about my future path. After all, I couldn't stay in the orphanage built by the court forever. They stop taking care of you once you're 14 or 15. Many older brothers and sisters before me were driven out like this. Those without skills ended up selling themselves into servitude. and even those with skills struggled to make a living. Times are tough, and it's especially hard for a woman, but I really don't want to be a servant. My father was a scholar, how could I sell myself into servitude? Fortunately, over the past few years, I've managed to earn a little money from embroidery, so I thought about becoming a seamstress and living that way for a while. But when I asked around, I found out that the shops didn't need someone like me after all. My embroidery skills weren't particularly outstanding. So I had no choice but to take on hard labor. I rented a small room and washed clothes for others. It was exhausting. In the winter, the water was bitterly cold, but heating it required firewood, and firewood cost money. My hands became rough and ugly. Every time I looked at them, I felt like crying. If my parents were still here, I definitely wouldn't be living like this. Slowly, I came up with an idea. There were so many girls in the orphanage, I could hire them to do the washing, earn a small profit from the difference, and at least not have to work so hard myself. We were all children without parents, so we matured early and understood the importance of money. Gradually, I started getting more orders, but this wasn't a sustainable business. Even though it didn't make much money, there were still people competing with me. The turning point came when I was 16, before the first month of the lunar year had even ended. I was stunned by earth-shattering news. I wasn't actually my parents' daughter. It turned out I had been switched at birth, and now my real parents had specially sent my 2 older brothers to come and take me back home. Judging by their appearance, it must be true. After all, the clothes they wore were more expensive than anything I owned. What could they possibly want from me? So, I handed over my job of hiring people to do laundry to a younger sister at the orphanage who I got along well with. If everything goes smoothly in the capital, I probably won't need this job anymore. All along the way, my 2 older brothers were very kind to me, buying me clothes I had never worn before and taking me to eat many delicious foods. But every night when I thought of my parents, my heart ached. If only they were still alive, they could have come to the capital with me and seen their biological daughter. When I arrived in the capital, I learned that they were the young masters of the Ningwa mansion, something I never dared to imagine. The mansion was very grand, and the family members were all harmonious, not as frightening as I had imagined. My mother held me and cried for a long time. We looked so much alike. Then she took me around to introduce me to everyone one by one. When we came to the girl who had taken my place, my mother seemed at a loss for how to introduce her. The girl, named Yiru, looked so much like my mother that I took the initiative and called her sister. My mother showed me the courtyard she had spent a long time preparing for me. In my eyes, it was nothing short of a paradise on earth. But when I said so, they all burst into tears. After spending more than half a month together, I could clearly sense that everyone felt the need to compensate me. Every time Mother heard my brother talk about my days in Zuzhu, she would cover her face and weep. However, in my view, heaven has already been more than kind to me. In a way, the person I feel closest to in the family is my parents' biological daughter, Sister Yiru. She resembles Mother, but in a younger version. Seeing her reminds me of the happy days when our family of 3 was together. That's why I enjoy being close to her. Mother and Father were happy to see this. I knew that one of us was their biological daughter, and the other was the daughter they had raised for 16 years. They didn't want us to have any conflict. However, I felt that Sister Ru always seemed to be very cautious around me, as if she felt guilty, thinking she had taken my good life. So, I took the initiative to tell her about my childhood, letting her know that I, too, had been very happy and received all the love her parents had given me. So, she didn't need to feel guilty. On the contrary, if it weren't for Father always protecting me, I might have died, and if it weren't for me, perhaps Father wouldn't have died. Sister Yiru is very intelligent and has taught me many things. I truly admire her for being so capable, unlike me, who only learned a few characters as a child and can only do laundry and rough work. Although I study diligently, I still fall far short compared to Sister Yiru. Mother said she wants us to return to our respective places, and I asked if Sister Yiru would be unhappy about that. Aru is a clever girl, don't worry, but this time, things still didn't turn out as we had expected. The Emperor suddenly bestowed a marriage, and the household was thrown into chaos. While Father and Mother were worrying about the arranged marriage, Sister Yiru said she would go. She gave many examples, and I thought she was right. Besides, isn't it a good thing to marry a prince by the Emperor's decree? Why is everyone so unhappy? It wasn't until I asked the maid assigned to me by mother that I found out what kind of person this prince was. Suddenly, I understood why father and mother were arguing, because people could die. This should be my marriage contract. How could I let Sister Yiru take my place? It's unfair to her. But Sister Yiru said that if I, with my poor manners, were to anger the prince, everyone would suffer. Mother had discussed the dowry with me in advance, saying she would give Sister Yiru more, and by the time I got married, there might not be as much left. I understand, after all. Sister Yiru married into that family for my sake. I should be content. If that's how you think, then mother can rest assured. As for the matter of the family registry, father and mother explained it to me bit by bit. It's not that they don't want to include me, it's just that it's no longer possible now. For me, being able to live with them is more than enough. I don't mind being an adopted daughter, as long as they know I am their biological daughter. That's all that matters. Effort and reward should be proportional. I can't expect a good reputation without doing anything. No matter how much is given to Sister Yiru, I can understand it. On the day Sister Yiru returned home for a visit, I didn't see the prince, but I heard my mother ask her about the prince's household over and over, fearing that she wasn't living well. However, from what Sister Yiru said, it seemed she was doing fine. But after Sister Yiru left, my mother said, Yiru has always been one to share only the good news, never the bad. Fortunately, in the prince's mansion, my sister is in charge, so my mother and I can often go to visit her. I heard that the prince usually doesn't like to stay in the mansion. I thought that being a married couple meant being inseparable like my parents. But I never expected there to be a relationship like my sister and the prince's. Isn't it uncomfortable to be so polite and distant with each other? Until that day when I went to see my sister and happened to run into the prince. With just one glance, I understood why my sister thought it was fine to be polite and distant. Although the prince didn't look like the three-headed, six-armed figure from the rumors, his aura of menace, no. It should be called dignity, made me feel like I couldn't even breathe. My sister is so pitiful, all for my sake, I told her, but she still comforted me, saying she was living well. How could it be, sharing a bed with such a person? I'd be afraid he might pull out a knife in the middle of the night and attack my sister. Not long after, father and mother said they had almost finalized a marriage arrangement for me. The prospective groom was one of father's students who had recently passed the imperial examination and came from a well-off family. He was 2 years older than me, had good character, and was known to be upright, though his marriage had been delayed due to mourning obligations. Now, with no parents left, he had bought a small house in the capital. His relatives were all back in his hometown, so if I married him, life would be quiet and uncomplicated. He's clever and will treat you well. Father said, it took me a while to understand what he meant, that he would treat me well because he was shrewd enough to know that even as an adopted daughter of the Ningwa mansion, he wouldn't dare mistreat me. As for my mother, she broke down the details of this marriage arrangement for me, explaining the reasons behind it. In short, I would be marrying beneath my status, and even if it was just out of respect for the Ningwa mansion, he wouldn't dare treat me poorly after marriage. Instead, he would likely dote on me. That actually sounds much better than how my sister married. Although I've been learning the rules for over 2 years, I'm still not quite like the well-bred young ladies raised in the capital. If I were to marry into a family that was too high-ranking, the rules and expectations would surely be much stricter. So, I agreed, but father and mother still arranged for me and Xu Heng to meet, and after seeing him, I felt even better about this marriage. Xu Heng had delicate features, a gentle temperament, and seemed very approachable. Most importantly, he clearly looked like a scholar, somewhat frail, and it seemed he wouldn't be able to put up a fight. The dowry was prepared by mother herself, and she gave me a lot of silver notes. Yuan Eru are different. She married into the royal family, so her dowry not only had to be abundant but also had to uphold appearances, since you're marrying into a lower status. Many things couldn't be prepared appropriately, so I've converted them all into silver notes for you. Silver notes are great, I like them. Besides, unlike my sister, there are some things I simply can't appreciate or have no use for. On the other hand, my sister added to my trousseau and gave me quite a few nice things. Life after marriage has been quite pleasant. Xu Heng and I get along well. It really is an advantage to marry into a lower status, unlike father and mother, who can hardly even eat a meal together without someone gossiping about whatever they do. Now, with just the two of us as the masters of the household, even the servants wish us well. Shu-hung always brings me some food when he returns from work, and when he has time, he takes me out for a spring outing. No wonder father says he's clever and not pedantic. A little over a year after our marriage, I became pregnant, and I was very much looking forward to this child. Mother and sister came to visit me and brought many gifts. When Shu-hung found out, he said, "Your husband is almost being kept by his wife. Aren't you happy about it?" Of course I am. It's just that I recall the rules I learned before. After the main wife becomes pregnant, it's common to give the maidservants around her a chance to serve the husband. I don't want that. I want him to be mine alone. But I know this thought of mine is wrong. Even my mother, when she visited last time, subtly hinted at it. I don't understand why the daily life of common families is different from that of wealthy, noble households. Is it because the wealthy have enough money to support many concubines? But I still found an opportunity to bring it up, only to find Shu-hung's reaction even stronger than mine. "I'm not some lust-driven monster. Do you think I can't live without women? But everyone does it this way," I said, feeling upset. "Then consider me a henpecked husband." He pinched my cheek and said, "He is a very easygoing person, and it's not the first time he's mentioned being henpecked." Instead, he would correct me, saying things like, "In life, one should be content and happy, and not bother with what others say." He truly is content and happy. This year, when my grandmother celebrated her birthday, everyone went back, and even the Prince of Li showed his respect. At the time, I was worried that Shu-hung might feel uncomfortable, since the other brothers-in-law all held high positions and great power, while he was just a minor official. But when I turned around, I saw him chattering away in front of the Prince of Li. Though I had no idea what he was saying, the Prince of Li remained expressionless. I was afraid the prince might slap him to death after all. With his slight build, the prince could easily take down 10 of him. After I got back and told him, he actually retorted with a righteous tone, saying he had only killed 5 at most. "Is that something to be proud of? Our child is a boy." When he was born, I breathed a sigh of relief. But then the maid hurriedly told me that Shu-hung had fainted before he even had a chance to see the baby. When he woke up, he held my hand and said he would never have another child. I replied, "As if you were the one who gave birth." But it hurts my heart. I heard that he suddenly fainted, and no one was quick enough to catch him. So he hit his head on the ground. At that moment, I felt he was just holding me back, though at least he's still driven and ambitious. The full moon banquet was held with great fanfare. He invited several colleagues over, and the baby was very cooperative, not crying loudly. And I finally completed my postpartum confinement, took a thorough bath, and realized that indeed, with better living conditions, people become more delicate. Not long after, the Prince of Li went off to war, and my sister had good news again. I sometimes brought Yao Yao over to play. Since the baby gradually became more good-looking, Yao Yao no longer rejected him, though she would still occasionally worry that he might revert to his ugly appearance at birth. Although our little life was going well, some people couldn't stand it. My sister, being pregnant, didn't go out much, but I've been hearing quite a lot lately. Although it was all just gossip, it was unpleasant to hear. It was only after Shu-hung persuaded me that I managed to hold back. Mainly, those who spread the rumors came from decent backgrounds. They were simply jealous of my sister. I said to Shu-hung with frustration, "You should work harder and get a promotion, so I can have the confidence to stand up to them." He spread his hands, looking quite helpless. "I want to, my dear, but you have to understand, your husband is just a scholar. I can't carry heavy loads or do manual labor. Where would I get achievements? It's going to take a long time." Sigh. He also sighed. The days passed slowly and leisurely, and Shu-hung did get a promotion, though just a small one. Still, we were very happy and even celebrated it specially. After we had eaten and drunk our fill, he spoke up first. "We really are like-minded. If it were anyone else, they probably wouldn't be in the mood to celebrate over such a small promotion. Even a little is an achievement." I thought Shu-hung was quite impressive. After all, official positions in the court were like a carrot filling a hole, one per slot. Although he had been a successful candidate in the imperial examinations back in the day, there were plenty of those, not to mention the top scholars and the second-place finishers. He wasn't outstanding enough to have someone else pulled out to make room for him. Staying in the capital was already a result of father's help, and he was content with that. Our little one is growing up. Maybe we should have another child, I said. On such a good day like today, let's not bring up those unhappy topics. How can this be considered unhappy? He muttered gloomily. You know, I'm scared. After all, one child is enough. I want a daughter like Yao Yao. Before there was even a hint of a child, the capital underwent a drastic change. The Prince of Li ascended the throne. This could be considered a good thing, I suppose. Xu Hengxi whispered to me later. I never expected he had an emperor as a brother-in-law. I looked at his foolishly delighted expression and didn't want to tell him that he also had a wife who almost became the empress. As for my mother, she started visiting frequently after Prince Li ascended the throne. At first, I didn't understand why, but slowly it dawned on me she was afraid I might feel it was unfair. After all, who wouldn't want to be the empress? But I don't. I feel I'm not worthy. So I made it clear to mother that I wouldn't overthink things. Sister is the daughter recorded in the Zhao family genealogy, while I'm just an adopted daughter, with no rightful claim from the start. With this, mother can rest easy, she said, her eyes reddening. My life is good now, and I won't envy others. I replied, although I did feel a bit envious of my sister at first. I'm not foolish. Even if I spoke up and others believed me, what would it change? It would be deceiving the emperor, likely leading to the execution of the entire family. Sister might be spared out of the emperor's affection from their years as husband and wife, but as the one who spoke out of turn, I'd surely be put to death. Do I have a death wish? It's been so many years. It shouldn't be that everyone returns to their original places. My sister is deposed, and I become the empress. The emperor isn't someone who picks up trash. I'd rather this matter rot in everyone's stomach. For me, having a sister who is the empress is a good thing. But I never expected that just because the emperor disagreed with holding a selection of consorts, there would actually be idle ministers questioning my sisters and my background in court. Although the emperor didn't believe it, he couldn't stop the rumors from flying everywhere. Xu Heng was the one who first told me about this as a joke. Luckily, he didn't see the expression on my face the moment I heard it. Who would believe such gossip? I pretended not to care, just picking faults. Who cares if it's true or false? But when the rumors spread like wildfire, even Xu Heng began to doubt. I patted his head as usual and said, have you lost your mind from studying too much? If I were really my father and mother's biological daughter, would I pass up marrying the emperor to marry you? Fortunately, time is a great healer. Now everyone has forgotten what King Li's reputation was back then, only remembering that he is now the emperor. Hearing this, Xu Heng also said, right, what were these people thinking? However, I still felt uneasy. Unfortunately, my mother has been ill lately, so it wasn't appropriate for her to enter the palace. That's why I sent in my nameplate. Along the way, I thought to myself, my sister truly is my sister. Faced with such a major matter, she remained calm and composed, but then, she dismissed the palace attendants. As soon as I mentioned it and saw her expression change, I realized something was wrong. She actually had no idea.